This
deployment with
conference will
other
now be
firms.
recorded.
Sorry, I forgot.
I have experience in building workflows and workflow solutions with various graphics and engineering technologies. And so I'm really here to listen and hear what your guys' needs are and help facilitate things however I can and help reinforce utilizing existing resources. And for this group, for those that don't know, the presence or small presence that exists on Emmy. And to make sure you guys go on to Emmy onto the Grasshopper page and click subscribe so that when anyone does a post or an update, you get notified. It's a great tool and resource to share information.
Cool. Christine?
Hey, hi. I've been at the firm for about 4 years, and I'm currently working on a master plan project in Kendall Square. I mostly use Grasshopper for workflow issues, just to speed things up in Rhino, area calculations. Not so much for modeling or design. I use paneling for that. But to speed things up, like guardrails and stuff like that. Also some environmental analysis. That's about it. I'm excited to be part of this group, and I think this will be a good learning and sharing opportunity for everyone.
Cool. Let's see, Jesse?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Jesse Eveler, I've been at Elkis Manfredi for about 10 years, doing all sorts of things, mostly on the front end of design, but I've done all the way through CA on a variety of projects. I don't have a whole lot of experience using Rhino. Tom helped me out with a most recent project for the University of Virginia, where we did a small study of solar gain on different facades. And I thought it was interesting and curious as to how it could be helpful in future projects. Other than that, I don't have a lot of experience with Grasshopper. I used to animate in a program called Maya, so I'm very familiar with the process and the procedures of parametric design, but in a completely different way. And I'm really just curious to see how using this can enhance or make more efficient the current workflow that I use to design buildings and projects and master planning, because I'm really not sure right now. So I'm a little bit of a skeptic and just really interested to see how it can be used.
Kevin?
Hey, I'm Kevin Dunphy. I've been with Elkis Manfredi for almost exactly 6 months. So I moved here from Chicago just in time for the pandemic. But I was fortunate to have about 4 months, 3.5 months in the office. So, but my interest in Grasshopper comes from a big kind of collection of seemingly unrelated experiences. Like, I was into Linux administration before I went to architecture school. Before that, I was kind of taught myself web design and did some freelance work. And I used to build custom furniture before that. And what I see now happening that's pretty interesting is all those things are kind of converging a little bit, where you're using those kind of coding tools to actually create physical objects. And then I'm actually working on master plans now, and working on one in Alexandria. And Tom wrote a pretty cool script that kind of got me reinterested in Grasshopper and the kind of capability for what you can do with it in terms of creating quick, massing studies, environmental analyses, and things like that.
Awesome. And Bohan.
Hi, it's Bohan. I've been working in Oxford Friday for 6 months, and I'm doing the simulation on the building performance and energy usage, and mainly using the Grasshopper in Ladybug and Honeybee. I'm also learning the Revit and the Dynamo at the moment, trying to learn more tools to use them to do the energy analysis.
Cool. Do you like Dynamo so far? What's your experience?
Oh, I only used it from the day before yesterday, so
Okay.
I'm trying to learn this.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I don't know. I always push it, and then like the more I trust it, the more it lets me down. It's one of those things. I don't know.
No, but I didn't really
Need better documentation. It's just like everything's so opaque.
It's kind of it doesn't have as much development, especially now in like 2020 compared to Grasshopper. Grasshopper's got all these like, crazy Italian guys and Persian guys working on all these plugins, and like there's so much out there. Whereas Dynamo, I feel like, I don't know. Yeah. Maybe there's stuff we don't know about. I'd be curious to see about the Rhino and Revit too. I think there's a lot of potential there. So I mean, Tom and Joe, we're gonna go through some standards of what Alchemist Freddy already has. I'll hand it over to them. Do I need to make you a presenter or something? Organizer? Are you an organizer?
I don't know. I'm on my laptop side, so I don't have access to Emmy or anything. Do you have access to Emmy to share screen?
Oh, I can share. Yeah, sure. How about that? I'll share.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sure, no problem. Emmy.
Thanks, Emmy.
Yes.
So what Chad had touched on was that there is a sort of light presence on Emmy, and there's probably a lot more than we've shared in the past. But just so everybody's sort of on the same baseline about where the firm is and where the resources are to date, and maybe building upon a structure or an organization that has already been put there, might just answer some of the questions about how do we work together. So yeah, in the design practice, Grasshopper, Anish is going there. Along the left, you'll see a slew of scripts that Joe and I and Kate, and Anish is a new member of our team. I don't know if everybody caught that, so really appreciate his initiative here with the Grasshopper. But if you click on one, you'll find that there is an example project, a screenshot of the script below. All those white boxes are sort of instructions, down to like what you're supposed to do first, which mouse button to click with. And the idea was that anybody could sort of go in with little experience and use these scripts. Some of which have been pretty successful. We use them a bunch, like the sunlight hours script and radiation analysis. A lot of the environmental scripts have been used quite a bit. But there's also some organic sculptural things in there. Some things like Alex was touching on, organic growth and more computational heavy organic, maybe not so much for a building design, but something more where we were trying to push the limits of the fabrication technology or understand the limits, the complexities that we could get out of Grasshopper. So there's the H drive link.
There we go.
Thank you. So in there, you'll see that the folders are the same as the names in the gray column. At the top, there's a couple 0 folders for organization. One's called In Progress. And if you click on that, you'll notice that there's just so many in progress. The reason for that is because we started developing these things, not understanding necessarily how they're going to be utilized in practice or in training or for fun. And we kind of just got them up to a working level and kind of said, okay, that's good enough for now. If somebody has an inquiry, we can point them in this direction. We have a great library of things. Once the in progress got some steam, we might like reformat it and take that time and then push it onto ME and push it into the Grasshopper definitions folder. There's also a plugins folder in there with a lot of the plugins that you might need if you open some of these things and you don't have the recommended plugins. But please email myself or IT to get those things installed on your machine before going ahead and installing it. That's kind of it. So I encourage you to just kind of explore what's in there. It can be a little dense if you have a topic in mind and you want to ask me or Joe, you know, have we looked at this sort of thing before? That's great. If you look at ours and it's in there in a category and it stinks and yours is amazing, just let us know that that's you know, there's a better version out there of something. To be honest, we just didn't have enough bandwidth to continue moving forward with this at a great rate. But working with folks like Kate and Kevin, Rohan, Anish, everybody really, we've been sort of getting this thing out sort of in little waves. So I'm excited for the small tsunami that Anish is putting together.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's partially what we can do, right? Is like build the skills on a broad basis, not even just in this group, but then I think if we can start disseminating it to everybody else, and at least like people are aware of what the possibilities are, and then I don't know, I think it's just those baby steps and maybe making those things. So actually I had a project that I wanted to show that kind of is a good example of that. So I have, maybe I'll go back to an old presentation on this. So this is it's a shopping mall project that I was working on in November, October-ish. And so it had like a weekly meeting rhythm. It was just me and a project manager who, the whole thing was all in AutoCAD, right? And it was just dumped on me and it was like, okay, we have this master plan, it changes every week. We love to work in AutoCAD. Other people love to work in AutoCAD. And that's how we print it out. So how are you gonna deal with that? And so I kind of took an incremental approach in like sort of slowly wheedling this project into turning it into a Rhino Grasshopper project. And so like, for example, like a really old document was something, let's say, what was our plan? I mean, it still looked pretty similar actually. It's just like your typical Elkis Manfredi plan, right? I get like something like this, right? And so one of the main things is I just started at the firm. They were like, okay, you got to do these parking layouts. And oh, see, ask me something. But so I had to do these parking layouts, and it was just for these shifting boxes. And you know, sometimes it would be like this, or it would be like something else. And I after like a week of that, doing it in AutoCAD and trying to remember all of my AutoCAD commands, I decided I'm going to do it in Rhino and try to script it and turn it into a Grasshopper thing. And so I took the outline and basically just made a simple script that took the AutoCAD, put the outline on it, and did, I mean, I just thought through it in terms of how do I construct, even if I was drawing a parking garage just at its dumbest level of like, it's got your 24-foot aisles around it, you split it, you find the best direction, and you break it up. And so I don't know, I use it to get parking layouts and parking numbers. And then that basically slowly grew and grew into this monster where basically the whole project in every building came under this whole script, this single script that basically fed all the data into. And so Tom was actually helpful for showing me how to use Human UI. And it's this really interesting plugin that lets you take data live from Grasshopper and put it straight on the screen so that if any of this stuff changes, it can all update live. So these building masses are just being controlled by like building outlines. So there's like it's just like big polylines, right? And they're extruded. So just if I get a new outline, I put it in and I pump it out and I get all the numbers and it pumps into that. And so I remade the presentation set to basically be a little more 3D friendly based on that. And I don't know, it was interesting to just go from step by step where I just slowly, because I kept it white and I kept it all the same colors, but I slowly turned it into a 3D presentation just by taking bits and pieces and starting to script it and make it something better. And that was only after like a month, and then it went on hold. So I was really hoping to like, you know, go into solar analysis, wind analysis. Once you get all this stuff in Grasshopper as masses, it's pretty trivial to just take the skin and analyze it and get all the other data and, you know, put it in the same format, right? You would have the same layout and everything, and then just pull it all directly from Rhino rather than, I think I was exporting it into AutoCAD and then printing off all that stuff and going through InDesign and all that stuff. You know, I think people, it was just a process, but I think it paid off in the end. And I think because it was step by step, I felt like there was a lot more that could add on to it later. So yeah, I don't know. I figure if other people have Grasshopper scripts too, I think it'd be cool to like each week just like kind of take time to everyone bring them up on the screen, things you're working on. We talk about it, maybe spitball about it, or things that you want to do. But yeah, I figured show you guys this as just a piece of it. But yeah. Any questions on this script?
So how are you generating the massing? Are you modeling it and then assigning the BREP and then generating the data, or are you inputting the data and the massing appearing?
Just these like curves, little curves. So there's a ground floor line and then there's an upper floor line, because a lot of my buildings will have a different ground floor plate than above. You can see the residential has just these two lines, right? So if I turn off the Grasshopper, it's just this, right? The outlines of the ground floors are where it changes or whatever shifts, right? And then I just extruded it, and that gave me the numbers that I just sort of added up, and each floor is like assigned to something different. But yeah, and Human was really good for this because then I could color code it, and then the colors was like a color scheme that you can actually keep consistent across into the pie charts and stuff. And you can make the lines a specific color too, so you can make line weights in 3D in Grasshopper. That was a big thing, that everything's so like white and pasty, but if you use Human and really like curate a view in your script, then you can make something that you can then just print out, or even show in a live in a client interaction. You can say, if like there was actually one meeting where they're like, okay, what if we added a floor onto it? And I hate that meeting where you put that's such a simple thing in like the meeting notes, and you're like, I'm gonna come back next week. Just like, no, let's just figure this out right now. Give you that number.
We've used it is the Human plugin, and it's also a plugin called Conduit. I think it's an MIT thing, but it's together they can do what Anisha showed. So this, I would say, is like a small master plan. When I was working with Kevin Dunphy, we were looking at it on a large master plan. You can work with baseline curves like Anisha is doing. It could work with volumetric masses where you're sort of contouring them or slicing them vertically to get some of the data extracted. Kate was using it on a single building project where she was slicing and dicing her units into polylines and extruding them vertically because they were stacked on top of each other. And she was able to extract data like unit counts and square footages. And as polylines change, and it's a two-dimensional change, pretty simple, just like CAD, all of your pie charts, all of your pinwheels, all of your bar charts would change live for you on screen. Anisha's diagrams and output look very different from Kate's, look very different from Kevin's. I'm sure they look very different from the beautiful stuff that like Christine does. But I think that's wonderful that everybody's sort of developing their own style, and it's per project. But we're using the same set of tools in 3 or 4 different ways, which is cool.
I guess I'm interested in what the for this particular definition, what the input was exactly. Like, what was your input in? Is it numerical or is it massing? And then what was the output? So input was closed polylines, and then you're telling it what your targets for overall gross is, and then it extrudes.
Adding it all up. So I'm adding all these numbers into like these areas, right? I'm bringing them all in, and then wait, that's not where I'm adding. Hold on. Yeah, I can really. Yeah, it's like. Yeah, it's adding them up and then converting those numbers into text, and then putting that text into Human into order where it's like, okay, what's my residential number? and then it puts, I use concatenate a lot. That's like a really key one where you can take, one piece of text and then another piece of text and just jam them together and put it as a display. So if you have 40,000, but you have the word square foot after it, you want to edit it that way, or level 2, level 3, right? That's another way you'll say like, okay. I also had, even on this, I think I turned it off, but it's like live, there were like live tags on each floor telling you the square foot for each floor. And it's like a 3D tag. That was like a simple where you just you say, what's the level 9 square foot, and you put it. So I can always check my numbers and just be like, okay, what am I by floor?
Right. Did that answer your question, Christine?
Yeah, sort of. It looks super overwhelming in that it's a huge definition. So I was just trying to understand like what was going in, what's going out.
Yeah, I have a simpler one that I could send you the link to. Anish has gone and sort of customized it for his own storyline or data metrics. Again, each one of these is sort of like a beta, and then we pass it around and people start to add to it, make changes, make it their own. Linearly in this script, which would be different in a few others, is you would draw a closed rectangle or any sort of closed shape in 2 dimensions. In Grasshopper, and that's sort of the only thing you're drawing in Rhino space. You might draw them at certain elevations or Z heights if things change, like Anish's penthouse versus his block office building below, as I'm reading it. So you take that closed curve and then you'd run it through an extrusion to give it a volume. You'd run it through a contour. You'd be able to take all those contours and do something like a mass addition. And then the results of that mass addition would go into maybe that pie chart right there that we can see. And on a master plan, if you do that over and over again and you're mindful about your colors and your organization and your layer structure, you can start to generate a multitude of comparisons and data metrics. So as soon as Anish changes the floor-to-floor height of the office building, because it has to for whatever reason, you'll see all the stuff change. If you were to read your numbers and just like Anish is saying, it's kind of like a checkpoint, like, oh yeah, so that was cool, and then everything changes. Does my gross square footage over a huge master plan, as soon as I made that one change to a building, did I go over? Am I under? Am I on target still? I don't know how we do that.
You do the math yourself, right? So like you'll know that, yeah, this number times 8 because I have this many floors. And so I've already got the number of floors as an input. So you just take that multiplication and then you add it, and you just have to, like, I'm a really disorganized person, and that's really why this script is so disorganized. But, people who are good and organized, and definitely it should be done in a more organized way, just plan it out which way makes sense in your head, I think, and work with it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, if people are interested in this, it's called a heads-up display, HUD, and that's kind of like you put on some cool futuristic glasses in your peripheral, you can see everything that's going on around you, right? Like, what type of tree is that? Or, oh my gosh, there's a car coming from behind me. But here, no, it's all Rhino, and it's all based on your architectural project or your design project. So if you guys would like to, I could go back to the original beta script. This is just a few steps forward and give a rundown of what you might want to draw, a few ideas about data that you can collect, and ways to visualize them on screen and to see how the script actually works, if it's helpful or not. It's not funny.
Yeah, I think that, because I'm interested because I have a similar script that does somewhat what you're describing. I'm sure your workflow is slightly different, and what it is first you model, and then you select the model, and it sort of slices it up and tells you what you have modeled. And I think that is more tailored to the process that I've been working on, where David pushes something down and he's like, okay, well, I want to know right away what what I have just done, so the square footage and the FAR and all of that. So this looks similar, but I don't have the graphics on the side. So that would be interesting to see. I think, Tom, you showed me.
Yeah, the graphics on the side are kind of the, I don't know, the back end tricky part. Starting from a mass or starting from a closed contour line on a ground level, that is a very simple front end change. Kevin Dunphy and I, with some of our other colleagues, discussed that. Kind of, you can start from points, you can start from lines, you can start from volumes. It's all up to how you want to design. If you love to sculpt three-dimensionally, please do, and we can slice those things that are otherwise pretty hard to calculate.
Yeah, and the HUD was pretty easy too. It's just like this layout that I'm showing here, where it's just, you say, I want a pie chart in this corner of my screen. This is a screen basically. And then each of these boxes is like a text. So, I have the word commercial that I know I want to put here. And I have my number for the square footage of commercial that I want here. So I have individual nodes within this Grasshopper script that are pointing to that space. And then human looks at that in relation to the overall box and makes it the HUD. So, these things can like move around, and that'll move around on your HUD.
It's so interesting that because we do a lot of master planning projects in the office, and there's some people doing this manually, there's something doing in Excel, and it would be great to have just a basic setup that we could share with people who are willing to try, and it could really speed up the workflow, because it's funny that we're all doing kind of the same thing, kind of converging into a similar script that solves for this really tedious thing that we do all the time. So that's great.
Yeah.
I think there's always a comfort level with your own script. I think that it's hard to get something that you're so close to and give it to somebody else and have them embrace it the same way that you know it intuitively. I mean, I've written a lot of stuff, and it is hard to get other people to use it and understand it the same way that I do intuitively. As I look at this project, one thing I would just want to throw out there as a guy on the outside is a lot of this stuff can be done inside of Revit massing with scheduling of the floor areas and which will slice up whatever massing shape you have with where your levels are, of course. And I just wanted to ask you, Anish, what advantages do you see over this process that if you've tried the same thing in the Revit massing environment with schedules and mass floors, what advantages do you see of this process over that?
Well, that was kind of what was interesting, is that, I mean, a lot of people do use that process where you have a form and then you slice it, but this project was definitely like a floor plate project. Like, all they were looking at were floor plans and where does that floor plate fit? What is your ground floor plate? What is your upper floor plate? They didn't really care about massing, right? It was just extrusions. And like, so that was what I was getting, was these floor plates. So it didn't really make sense for me to do massing. So that's why I made it in this whole logic that was just about extruded plates. But yeah, if you're doing a form one, then you'd want a different approach. But yeah, it's just the way because I was having to make changes on the fly, right? That's one of the things, is like, you have to understand every piece of it. And when those changes, yeah, it just made more sense for me to do it as little plates, because I was getting AutoCAD outlines too. Right? And then it was just how it.
Isn't there also kind of an inherent
variable floor to floors between the masses? In Revit, it's like you're kind of locked to your levels. Even if you have a whole bunch of different levels for each mass, it can be turned into kind of pain in the ass.
You could have a global parameter that controls the distance between the floors. There's a way in Revit to do, I think, everything that you're doing without probably having to wire a diagram. Just to throw it out there as an alternative, I think there's a lot of value in going through and doing exactly what you've done. And again, I never try to tell people how to design, because everybody's got a different way they start. And if you enjoy doing the computational process to do the same thing, and you come back to something that looks like the same final solution, it's whatever's going on in your head. It's all part of the design process. So I'm just throwing it out there as one of the things that I find a challenge is coming up with a great idea, right? So we all love to wire stuff and code stuff, but finding something that the software just doesn't do already is the hard part. Finding a good target is the hard part for me. And it is valuable and fun when you find somebody that has a great idea. Like Jeff Jacoby's always coming to me with, hey, shouldn't I be able to do this? And it's great to be able to jump in and try to solve something for him.
Yeah, I just think it would have been tough in the schedule, right? Because for me, I started it because I just need to do that parking thing first. And I knew how to do it in Grasshopper in my head already. And I could have learned something new, but I don't know. I like I said before, like Dynamo too, I think there was that level of fear where I wasn't sure if I tried it, if I got really far and then failed, then it would have been like, oh man, I could have just done it in Grasshopper. So I have seen Formit. Have you used Formit at all, Chris?
I have. It's basically SketchUp, except
the
that
masses plug into Revit, right? And then you can do stuff.
The connection to Revit is really not great, but it does allow you to do Dynamo inside it. But if you're going to do Dynamo inside of Formit, you might as well. You're better off, I think, doing Grasshopper inside of Rhino, because Grasshopper is again better than Dynamo. And if you're really just creating form, I think you're better off doing that in Rhino, honestly. The other thing I was going to say when I saw your parking layout, that looked very impressive, what you did. There is a tool that everyone can have access to if they want it installed. It's an add-on to AutoCAD that allows you to do two things. One is to do parking layouts, and the other is to do like truck turns, vehicle turns. And they're pretty intuitive. They're editable, parametric. So if you're doing a lot of that work, and it'll have little curved things at the sides, and however deep you want to get into it.
This is auto turn.
I'm sorry.
Auto.
It's the auto turn was an add-on that we had to pay extra for. This is now part of everyone's Autodesk suite now. It's actually an Autodesk product. It's not a third-party add-on, but it's like it. So if anyone that's interested, we can make it available to you, or send you. There's a couple of YouTube videos that talk about how the two things are used. They're about 5 minutes each, and you get a sense of how it's used, and they're pretty powerful for doing those couple of simple things. But great work. I mean, I really like what I see.
Does anybody else have anything? We got 15 minutes. If anybody wants to show anything. Let's see. Kevin, I want to see at some point your master plan stuff that Tom helped you with.
That's the beta. I can run you guys through. We took the beta and then we made it kind of more specific to Kevin and his team's approach.
Okay.
Do you want to go to it?
No, I mean, I don't know. Just maybe at a more specified time, maybe at another meeting if it's too soon. I don't know. Christine, do you want to present anything? Or Bohan, I know you're doing some energy modeling. Or maybe just keep it in your mind. Maybe at the next meeting we can have a more formal presentation.
Yeah. Sure. If somebody raises their hand to present next time, that's wonderful. If people are still thinking about it, what they want to pull together or need some more time, I'm happy to do sort of like a repeat of the heads-up display, but in the template version, so everyone can see where it is at its home base.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I think, Tom, the script that you put together for that might actually speak to some of the things that Christine was talking about too.
Yeah, and it's like a logic thing too for some folks that maybe haven't built their own or have some experience but not all. It's kind of a good refresher, just how to navigate a platform like Grasshopper is a little bit different.
The thing that I particularly like about it is taking the approach of literally doing the entire massing study in Grasshopper and then only baking it in once you've kind of zeroed in on your variables, instead of literally pushing and pulling all your surfaces and changing dimensions in the Rhino interface.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And then you and I discussed the potentials there for making physical models, or flipping scripts really quickly in Rhino Grasshopper to do a sun study or something in radiation or sunlight hours. All sorts of things are possible. There's too many variables to see which is the right route, which is why we need to talk to everybody.
I think that's really great about your you calling them your beta scripts, or the stuff that you put together that's more accessible, Tom. I think it's so clean and kind of baseline where you can add on the stuff that you need to it later on, based off of whoever's opening the file. I think having a baseline for this would be great, so that any person who wants to get into Grasshopper or even needs to do this really quick could get started. So I really like what you've got going on with the clean Grasshopper definitions, because mine certainly aren't clean either. It takes some time.
Yeah,
I know.
you're absolutely right. It takes a lot of time. I mean, Joe and I have spent countless weeks developing those, and formatting takes a long time. And coming up with language even for instructions, like I don't know what the right word is, and Joe will look at it and say, that doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, it doesn't. Not from my point of view, not from yours.
But it's important because it makes it accessible for everyone.
I think so too. It's really hard, and like Joe and I, while we're away, we haven't seen each other or worked side by side like we had every single day for like 2 years. So we're transitioning a bit, and one thing we do every day is send files back and forth. And we have a lot of stuff going on still. So if Joe or I send a link back and forth to each other, when we open that, say it's a Rhino model or a script, I don't want to be lost as soon as I get in there. I don't want to be overwhelmed and have a ton of questions and have to look around and say, I don't have my help here to ask a question. So the organization and the instructions and just general presentation tools that he and I have been practicing is something we want to try to continue to do and do better at, to be honest, and to be better like in terms of sharing with you all and the Elkis Med Ready community. We understand that we're a small team and we're trying to accomplish a lot, but it would be great if we could figure out a way that this group can contribute to that and grow it a little bit faster than he and I can do with Anish and Kate is like helping us out and using it on projects.
So I think Christine is hitting on one of the questions that needs to be answered, is the accessibility. Because as you know, I'm a super, super light Rhino user now. But if I opened Anish's file, I would have no idea what I'm looking at. And the appeal is incredible that you're just manipulating a few things and it's spitting out this data for you. So accessibility is one. The other thing is you look at this and think, wow, this is an extraordinarily complicated way to do something very simple. So what is the benefit to that? Is there a time save? Is it an accuracy thing that I'm no longer having to do anything, calculate this by hand, and I'm no longer getting errors in my Excel spreadsheets? So how is this, if you're trying to grow it, how is this easily accessible for people who have very little computer skills or some computer skills? How is this saving time? Is it not saving time? Is it taking a week to do something that could have been done in half a day? And I guess the third thing would be, and maybe it's the easiest, is the accuracy. Is there what is the benefit? Is it you're you're instantaneously getting results, and they're more accurate than having to manually calculate those things. So I think those are three things that we have to think about as if the idea is to grow this and have it more widely implemented into the office.
Education's a big topic, especially in the last year or so at Elkisman Freddie, with all the courses and everything that's been going on. And Rhino Grasshopper wasn't necessarily a part of that first round of like EM plus. I think the firm is trying to figure out a way to get more of that information out there. I know I've been training people in group settings and individual settings. I mean, I've done stuff with the whole IT group, the whole graphics group, on the one-on-ones with Joe or Kate or whomever wants to learn. It does take a lot of time, but some of these folks have, you know, maybe this goes to some of your ideas about making it more accessible, and the other topics to have it be implemented is that some of these folks were using different software packages or not really looking into doing the work in this way. More times than not, I hear that these folks get really excited about it once they get the hang of it, which does take a little time. There is a learning curve to get started, but once you get started and you clear that plateau, you never want to go back. I was a similar way. You know, I've done a bunch of projects in Revit. I like to design in Rhino. I like the computation side and sort of the automation side of Grasshopper. And it took a little while to be confident enough to get accurate results, to do things quickly enough to reach deadlines, to get drawings out there like in niches that are presentation ready and beautiful. It's a challenging transition from one platform to another, especially in architectural design. But again, I stress that I'd say 9 out of 10 people, if not more, say that they really appreciated it. It was hard at the beginning, and they will never look backwards and never go back to the way that they were doing it before.
I'd say to that, a lot of times when I try to do something basic, or even just the biggest idea of getting a form and slicing it up and getting the square footage, that can be achieved in under 10 components, in like a string of under 10 components. And the thing that generates the most wires is this other crap that you're trying to tack on to the end or the front or something else. And so if we can condense it for accessibility to that under 10 components definition, for someone to say, okay, well, you know, I can wrap my head around this, and then I'll tack on my crazy wires at the end when I need to customize it, then it becomes so much more accessible. And then for me, in terms of why I use it, it's because project managers or David, they don't have that much time to hover over your shoulder and wait for you to come up with what the new FAR is. They want you to shrink this down to 2 stories, and they want to know what the FAR is right away. And so that is what Grasshopper does for you. You do that, and immediately the number pops up, and there's no calculating, there's no opening another Excel spreadsheet or something else. No one touches the calculator, which is, it's awesome, and it saves time, and you get your answer, and you end up not wasting 8 hours of the day waiting for David to swing by the second time around. And that's a big deal, I think, and that's why it's helpful, especially with this master planning script, because we do that a lot, and he wants to know the number. Yep. So that's it.
Yeah, maybe if it was like almost like starting seeds of these scripts rather than like the whole script, like as like you're saying, like just how do you slice it with mass? What is the easiest, quickest way to just get a mass and slice it? But then at the same time, it's also components.
Simple version and
to
advanced
teach
version.
people 10 components, or just to give them a script that has 10 components in it. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth, but I could see both. Yeah.
A simple version and a more elaborate version. You know, you introduce it and give a tutorial based on the simple version, and then say, and you could go on further with these other details. But
Does Grasshopper still have the thing where you can collapse a bunch of components down into one thing and just have outputs? Because that seems like that simplifies a lot. I know at one point it wasn't super stable, so most people didn't use it. I don't know if it's been since then.
Yeah, for the organization we have now, that wasn't really a stable option at the time for some of these. So, but you'll see like these big rectangles that are grouping white objects, and sort of everything else I was hoping would just, you wouldn't even look at, because it's sort of the periphery and what's happening behind the scenes, unless something were to break and we have to reverse engineer it and fix it. But that was sort of, you know, look in these boxes and follow the steps, and let me know where it falls short, because I know it will. And I'd like to know like the feedback loop from, you know, if we go through this head stuff display thing. It wasn't really about contour slicing in areas, although it's brilliant to make a smaller 10 or less component script so people can just get started in area calculations and then start to tack on the things that are more advanced, like the heads up display. All of that is in there, and I think, excuse me, it would be easy to split it into two and make two versions. And if we have this sort of form and we can go through a script as what constitutes like a good baseline, then I think we can use that and kind of just move forward with it.
So it does seem like coloring groups is really important, especially if there's something that's repetitive. So if you didn't know what you were looking at, you saw there were 20 things arrayed, you'd think it was just really complex, when really they're all just doing the same thing. But Grasshopper doesn't have a way of easily consolidating them to run each input and then give its own unique output without jumping through some extra hoops. But it seems like if you have that colored rectangle over it, you can at least sort of easily parse it as something that's its own thing.
Yeah, and those colored rectangles are done in just what's called a preview node in Grasshopper. Anish's colors are a little different than the ones I was working on with Kevin, for example, where we were using the standard graphics presentation color template that's on it. So we have one that actually matches all the color palette work that the graphics team has done.
So I'm also curious, what do we guys think is the or like the gaps? What do we still need in terms of resources? I know for me, I think we need, I don't know how to do WebGL, OpenGL in terms of getting models onto the websites and stuff like that. I don't know, does anyone else have any ideas for projects? Yeah, yeah, Chris. Things that you think are necessary, what do we need?
I would actually need some fundamentals on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. I mean, what about the EM Plus stuff? Are we starting another series of Grasshopper classes? Is there going to be something coming?
Well, now that we have Vue, things have changed a bit because we have a little bit more bandwidth and another brilliant mind to help us navigate that path. It has been brought to my attention specifically that people have been asking for it. It's like a continuation of the EM Plus. I don't think it's going to be called the EM Plus, but Kate, Joe, and I have put together a syllabus for many courses, which we were calling Fab School to be fun. Everything from intro to Rhino to advanced Grasshopper, intro to laser cutting to advanced resin printing, everywhere in between, down to how many people would be involved in the course, who would teach it, its recurrences, and the course load and topics that would be in each course. I'd love to share that with you, Anish, and get your feedback on it. And maybe there's a way that we can tackle that either remotely or come up with a game plan for future phases of the office being open.
I mean, either way, I think it should be something we put on a webcam, and then we can record it. And then I was actually thinking like all these like meetings and discussions, and you know, maybe we start putting them on, like just recording them and like start a YouTube channel or something ridiculous like EMA TV or something, right? And just toss it out there, hashtag it up, and then, you know, like 50 people will watch it, but then it'll just be something. It'll be interesting to see.
You're crossing Joe's wall right now, and I can
crossing
see him. Well, I think Joe's interested in, and don't let me put words into your mouth, but videography and editing tools, and definitely a lot of sharing, more sharing and storytelling. I think that's a cool idea. We would have to go through some folks in the office to get that approved, but it's a really cool idea.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I guess we're gonna get some classes going. It seems like there's a good demand for Grasshopper stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, tell your friends if there's anybody that just wants to jump on. It doesn't matter your level of experience, even if you don't know what a Grasshopper is. You know, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Eyes and ears is all we're interested in right now, and getting sort of the word of mouth around, more excitement.
I would be interested in hearing people bring problems and then working through problems.
Yeah, I like that too. And creating like a 10-note script, like you can put me on the hot seat if you want. I'm cool with that. If you say, I don't want to say that there are problems so much as things that maybe take a little bit of time that you'd love to shorten that period of time, like area calculations or drafting parking layouts, something that possibly could be automated. Maybe it's possible with Grasshopper, but we don't know. And maybe we can get the first 10 strung together and make some progress and say, you know what, let's ask somebody to develop on that idea and try to turn around one of these betas or baseline models and scripts, and then we can share it with everybody, and at least everybody knows the next thing that we're working towards. And you're right, architectural real world problems to save time and money and get David and the client and everybody else on the project team information as soon as they can have it so that we can keep progressing.
Sounds good. What are we thinking in terms of time? Like when are we meeting? How are we meeting? How often?
Thursday at 3 is still good. I don't know. A few people couldn't make it to this time. Maybe Wednesday is a better time, but maybe still afternoon.
Yeah, I know that Becca does the mini modules at 3 o'clock on Thursday, so there might be some overlap of interest on those.
Oh, on Thursday. Okay, so then Wednesday would be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody's gonna come on Friday, so yeah. Sometime on Wednesday.
There is.
Yeah, it's the one that's dashed in red on the left.
And it might, I mean, maybe we just try it and then we'll see if it comes for a bit, and then if it has to move again, we'll go from there. But yeah, cool. I mean, we're about an hour, I think. We can call it from here, and yeah, maybe a week, or no, I think we'll say monthly, right? Maybe next month. I'll try to call another meeting. We'll see. I don't know. We'll figure it out. All right. Have a good rest of the week, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.